Hi everyone, this is a replacement video for our webinar that happened a little earlier today. There was an issue with the recording and the screen share, so we're just quickly re-recording all of the main content that was covered during the call. So we're going to start by looking at the elements that go together to make our packages. So initially we're going to look at our add-ons. If I navigate to the back end of the system under settings and settings, we are going to take a look under rates and add-ons. And in here, we'll have a list of all the different elements that we have configured so far that we can offer to guests or add to rate plans and rate packages, or combine together to turn into packages. Some with allowances, some without allowances, as complex or as simple as might be needed. So we'll start by looking at some of the simple ones and then add and grow on that. We'll take a look first at our extra bed. So by clicking in here, we'll see first and foremost, the name and description. You'll see we can add a specific image for this, really only useful if you are offering this to guests through things like mobility or through the kiosk, which we'll look at later on. Our charge group and charge code must be selected here, whatever we want to actually post. In this case, we are charging for the extra bed, so $25. In our occupancy type, we're using flat at the moment. This is telling the system how to calculate this in terms of the number. So adults and children, persons obviously being the combination of those two. When it comes to flat and room, you're normally going to be choosing flat. Most customers would be. Room actually calculates based on the number of rooms in a component suite. So even if you do choose room, for the most part, most hotels will have it calculate correctly. But if you're using component rooms, breakaway suites, suite rooms, where inventory is consisting of sub-inventory, then room will allow you to calculate that based on the rooms that are part of that suite that's occupied. But we'll leave that as flat. In our post type, we have options nightly, first night, every week, and last night. Nightly, probably the most common. When we choose nightly, we're able to select which days of week, which weekdays this is effective for. If that is not something that you need to change, then you can leave it as it is here. Below that, we have manual posting only. This prevents, as it says here, it prevents it from posting during the end of day. This can be useful mostly, I think, if you have a $0 add-on where you're not really charging the guest for anything. If I have this at zero, posting nightly, currently it will post extra bed, $0 on the guest's folio. We probably don't want that, in which case I'm going to select that. So we're recording that it's part of the reservation. The guest has it, they've requested it. But we're just not charging for it and we're not posting it on the screen. Sometimes you might have something complimentary. Maybe you're doing a 12 p.m. complimentary checkout and you want that at zero, and you do want the guest to see that you've posted that because it's a benefit that they've received, in which case you can leave with zero and not check manual postings only. Okay, we'll leave that back at the $25. Moving further down, you'll see consume next day. This would be useful for anything like a breakfast package, most commonly, where the guest arrives on day one, but uses the package element on day two. We also have common areas, Ving card only. This is for a key integration, a specific key integration, which would just allow for the passing through of pass level numbers to do things like elevator access, access to the gym, executive club, whatever it might be. Just a quick note, if you have consume next day with weekdays selected here, nightly posting, and you're using an allowance add-on, which we'll cover shortly, just to make note, that does impact when the allowance can be consumed. So if they have, let's say, breakfast as an allowance, that would mean that they cannot use their credit on the day of arrival if it's consumed next day, but they can use it on the day of departure. That's just something to consider there logically. If it's not done in any different way and it's not a consumable package, then you can leave it as it is. Under inventory, I've listed 5 here. What that's doing is telling the system that we have 5 of these only per day, given that all these days of the weeks are checked. So we can track how many we've already committed to give to guests versus how much we have available. And we will see this if we go back to the front end of the system. In our availability timeline here on the top right, we can drop down to item inventory and we'll see each of those add-ons that we have in the system for which we've put a number in that box. So again, we put in 5 for extra bed, and you can see over here, those are the 5. None of them have been picked up or added to a reservation so far. In the shaded boxes, you see that some have been consumed. Anything 5 or below will show us 2. We only have 2 mirrors, so that's always going to be shaded. But here you see 0. We've run out for today. So theoretically, let's actually test it. If I go into a reservation for today and add an extra bed, hopefully not one that already has it, we'll see. Yes, so we're going to add more to this room. I'm going to choose my extra bed. There it is. And I should get this prompt. Insufficient inventory for extra bed. We have a 0 available. I can go ahead and overbook. I have permissions to do so, but it does give me the opportunity to have that conversation with the customer that we don't have it available, or internally to go and figure out, where we can get extra beds from, borrow them from sister properties, and so on. Moving back to the back end of the system. Actually, before we move to the back end of the system, let me just drop in here real quick. When you are in this screen, this is a screen you'll also see when you're making reservations. When you're in this screen, as long as you have add-ons enabled, you'll see it. You'll have a bestseller option that it will default to each time. There's different revenue groups, charge groups here that you can kind of move through. But bestseller is where you're going to place all of the ones you really want to highlight. You want your reservationists, your agents to really promote those. Those will be listed as bestsellers and added to this screen. And that is also in the same area under rates and add-ons. We'll take a look at our extra bed again. So you'll see that option bestseller means it'll be included in that list. Uncheck it. It'll still be searchable. I can still use it, but it will not be included in that list. If I say rate only, then it won't be searchable. I can't use it unless I'm using a rate code, which it's already part of. So there will be definitely some that are useful for that. Maybe there's a specific breakfast package where it's a very low amount of money that you're backing out from room revenue. Maybe that's rate only. You would never want to sell it to people who are checking in on that day, for example, because it's too discounted. Similarly, or on the opposite end, reservation only would mean that you can never have it as part of a rate code. Less common, but definitely an option for you. Online and chain, you can ignore. Those are to do with our APIs as well as chain functionality for multi-property and so on. We then have parking add-on, breakfast add-on. These include or exclude in specific reports based on their toggle here. So breakfast add-on would include this as a breakfast calculation in our breakfast reports for how many people are coming for breakfast, which rooms, and so on. So that's important to consider there. Exclude from rate, bit into the weeds. That's really for revenue managers want to really lock down specific add-ons so that they could never be visible on rates to be added by revenue teams creating rates. Again, little in the weeds there. It's just functionality that we do have, just so you're aware. And with all of that selected, we can go ahead and save on changes, and our add-on is created. So that was a kind of extra bed one. Maybe we'll look at Mirror. I think Mirror doesn't post. It has 0. Yeah, so this is one of those ones where we have $0. It's manual posting only. Really, we're using this more than anything just to track inventory over here. So we don't need to post anything. Let's take a look now at another option I've created here, Executive Lounge Breakfast Adult. So this is something that I wouldn't really offer individually to guests. This is something I'd probably want to put as part of a rate or as part of a larger Executive Lounge access package. This would show me, because I have Executive Lounge Breakfast Adult, and in my example, only adults can have breakfast in the Executive Lounge. Over here, I've got my charge code selected and so on. My amount is 0. I could put in the actual breakfast amount here if I wanted to calculate that, but I'm going to do that as one sum on the kind of overall package itself. So the amount I'll leave is 0. Occupancy type adult, because we're only tracking adults here and how many we have in the system for these rooms. And then post type nightly. Consume next day. So that is, again, breakfast. So we want to know that's on the breakfast reports and it's happening next day. So I'll also make sure breakfast add-on is selected here. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose manual posting only, just so that it doesn't post on the guest's bill. So with all of that added together there, I can then go ahead and create something like Executive Lounge Access, which is also $0. And we have common areas allowing access from the key, because I'm using VinCard with that integration to give them access there. We have the charge code selected, and it's also adult nightly. So different things that can be added around Executive Lounge. I also have a credit. We'll look at those in just a moment. The reason I'm talking about that is that these individual elements, these individual add-ons can be combined together to make add-on groups. and we can create packages, kind of standardized packages that exist as an add-on group. So let's take a look at that. Under rates and add-on groups, I have two configured already, romance package and executive lounge access with breakfast. So let's take a look at this one as we've been looking at executive lounge more than anything. It has a name, and then of all the add-ons that we have in the system, these are assigned. I could add more if we wanted to add more. Maybe we're doing flowers on arrival, make it a little romantic. We'll leave it as it is. However, you'll see that there is a $7 nightly charge for the credit. We'll talk about that more. And then 0 and 0 for these two here. So we'll go ahead and save changes. Now, if we are assessing individual prices, then we put those in there and it'll give us the amount as a total. When we get to allowances, this will make a little bit more sense in terms of how it handles different taxes and so on. But this is where you can come to really build those kind of packages that you would then either associate with a rate code, just like the individual add-ons, um, or you can have them available for selling during the reservation flow or during check-in and so on. Now, sometimes you need to, or you want to offer specific add-on elements from this list uh, as a package, but you don't have a package or an add-on group already configured that has that. So maybe under romance package, for example, here, that has all these four things, but maybe we only want flowers and prosecco. Um, Maybe it's not romantic, maybe it's something else, and that's why we only want those two. I can do that using the bundle with price functionality. So before we look at bundle with price, it does need to be enabled. So under rate and add-on settings, you'll see this toggle here, enable bundle with price. Once you've enabled that, you'll also have these options, add-on bundle, add-on tax bundle. All this part of the screen down here is asking of you is what would you like the system to post on a guest's bill on their invoice when they are consuming a bundle that you've kind of packaged together on your own. In this case, we're going to say I want it to be called package charge. Maybe I'm calling it package room charge, whatever your hotel might want that to appear as on the invoice. It'll roll up all those individual charges as part of the package into that package charge. And in this case, package taxes too, just so we have one for the postings and one for the taxes. I can also enable add-on date ranges and sets in this screen. That is useful if you maybe have different seasonality for your add-ons, different price points. Lots of flexibility in there too, which is why I have it enabled here. But what that allows us to do with the bundle with price, if I go through the process of making a reservation, and let's say it's for 2 nights, and we'll just choose best available rate. And now again, this guest would like to have the flowers and the champagne. So let's just take a quick look here. I think miscellaneous, we had flowers on arrival, add. Now I'm going to use bundle with price here. I'm going to close the window there. And then champagne is probably under food and beverage. Prosecco, there we go, bundle with price. Add. Okay, notice you'll see bundle with price under these price points for each of those, just to kind of identify it as being different from normal add-ons where it might just post as its own item on the invoice. We'll go ahead and add this information in there just so we can see how this looks. Choose cash. Okay. So if we go into the add-ons tab here, you'll see that we do have those two there already. It is just best available rate. Again, we're seeing that they're bundled with price, and I could add more that is not bundled with price. Maybe we do the pet fee on its own, in which case, someone had asked this on the call actually, how do we let housekeeping know if a guest has selected a pet add-on? Two things we can do. There is a way to send an email when add-ons are selected by guests, maybe to housekeeping in this case. You can also, however, create a second stay over clean task, which mirrors your standard one, daily service in this case, but I've also made daily service pet. And really that's just saying, okay, I can let housekeeping know there's a pet in this room. This will appear on their task sheets itself. So it's a very easy way to indicate this is a pet in that room. If I go to bill and charges, let's take a look at the invoice here. And we'll do pro forma detailed. And this may not show on the screen based on how Zoom is recording this, but this is giving us the breakout with the each individual item showing the Prosecco, the flowers, and the $10 cancellation fee in there too, it looks like. Oh, that's just because of the odd charge code being used for that particular package. So it's the pet fee, I think, is the $10 we're seeing there. Now, if I check this guest in, see what rooms we have available. Okay, one of those. No, we'll just choose 504. Okay. So once we have this guest checked in, and if I do advanced bill, again, this is not something you would ever really want to do in the real world because it's going to post 2 nights worth of room and tax and baggage charges and so on with today's revenue dates. That's just something to bear in mind. But I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway just to make our lives a little easier. Okay, so now you'll see what we were talking about on screen with the package charge, package tax, and then cancellation fee, which is our $10. I think it was pet fee that we added. Under package charge, if I expand that out, I can see what we were seeing on the pro forma there, the room charge, Prosecco, upgrade, upsell, and so on for each of those nights. And then taxes are showing under the tax area too. So it's a nice way to kind of group them all together just to make it easier for the guest to see. And then when you're printing the invoice out, you have different options. Detailed bill items, for example. We take a look at that one. Just wait for that to generate. There you go. So we see for each date and each charge code, each time it's posted, listed out in order there. Other options you'll see in here, summary by charge code, summary by day, detailed bill. So feel free to familiarize yourself with these options too, if that's helpful. But here you see package tax, package charge, and then cancellation fee. So that's probably the one that we'd be most likely presenting to the customer. Okay. So those are add-on groups and add-on bundle with price. When you are going through this reservation flow process, you do also have the option to choose those add-on groups that you've created. So again, these kind of predefined packages are available for us here. This just allows us to kind of, add more. And you can even bundle together predefined add-on groups, if that makes sense to do so. So you can get kind of iterative and like build upon prior existing elements to build more complex packages too. When it comes to creating a rate, as you may already know if you're familiar with creating rates, for each of our rates, I'll just choose one random here. Let's choose retail with parking. That would have an element in there already, but it'll show us. Under rate details, we have all of our nice information as usual, but we also have add-ons. And in here, we have a list of all the add-ons that we could potentially add to this rate. So any that are marked as add to rate are just simply not marked as anything. So options include in price or add to price. Now we are using this parking package. It is charged at $5 nightly and it is added to the price. So what this means is if I were to purchase this rate, let's say $100, my retail with parking, the rate would be $100 room charge, and there'd be a $5 parking charge added to the invoice as a second line with its own taxes and so on. That's add to price. So we're quoting $105 when we are offering this rate to the guest, but it will post on two separate lines, basically. So they'll see what that package consists of and how much each of those price points are. If we wanted it to be backed out of the $100 instead, include in price will do that. So we would quote, say, $100, the original amount we mentioned in the back end of the system, $5 of that $100 will be posted and recorded under parking package revenue. And the other $95 will be posted and recorded under room revenue. Now, from the guest perspective, they'll just see the $100, but in the back end, it'll be calculated correctly for your finance team. You also have bundle with price. So if you wanted it to be added to price, but not show as a separate line, that's your option there too. In which case it'll say package charges, which is what we defined that as. And then obviously here you have the option to use or not use, depending upon what makes sense. All these different ones that we've made so far are available for us down here to select from. So good to know that it's also an option on the rate side of things too. So we've looked at our breakfast and parking packages. Now let's take a look at a little bit more complicated ones that have allowance functionality. First and foremost, if you don't have allowances active, that is something that we can work through with you. Feel free to reach out to us via email, officehours@stayintouch.com. You can also contact support, but we'll help you get that enabled. There's also lots of resources in our Fresh Desk, which will kind of guide you through a lot of that functionality. If you're not familiar with where you can see this, if you're logging into the system, go ahead and click on Knowledge Base here. This will take you directly to our solutions list. You can search for particular things that might be helpful. So, for example, if I say allowances, and then I can just hit enter, see everything we have. Under solutions, you'll see hopefully all the useful information. So, your table of contents here, everything you need to know about allowances. So, what do we need to know? Let's take a look. First and foremost, when we're dealing with allowances, it's important to go into financials and charge codes and make sure that you have the charge codes built for what it is that you want to allow, what you want the guest to consume. So I have a couple of examples. We built one on the call earlier, so I'll go over what that was built as. We have, yeah, we're going to use spa. So I want to do a spa food and beverage package, which includes $25 per day that the guest can consume in food and beverage from the spa. So the first thing I'd want to do is make sure I have those charges that the guest can consume. So we need it broken out, and I do. I have spa services, spa sales, spa food, beverage, and non-alcoholic beverage. And these are the three, food, beverage, non-alcoholic, that I'd probably want included in my $25 credit. It is really important also to note the taxes that you're seeing here. Notice it's 8,000 is the tax code for spa food, beverage, and non-alcoholic beverage. 8,001 is being used for spa services and spa sales. So if I look at those taxes, 8,000, we're calling it tax A. That's calculating at 5%. Tax B is calculating at 2%. So because they're different tax amounts, we would not want to have, or we couldn't really have them mixed in an allowance because the guest bill would never be balanced. The base charge code needs to have the same calculation in taxes in order for that to work out. It'll prompt you if you're doing that. It'll let you know so that you're not making that mistake. But that's something to be considering at this point. So we have our spa F&B, individual elements created. Now we're going to look at the actual allowance charge codes itself. So down here, I have the three created already, 6500 through 6502. We have spa F&B package allowance, which is of the type allowance, and the group allowance and the type allowance. Spa F&B package profit is the group allowance and the type unused allowance. So that's our profit, what the guest has not used. They've not consumed it, therefore we consider it kind of profit internally, even though it's not new money. Spa food and beverage package loss. This would be the difference between the cost of the package and how much the guest has actually consumed. So if we had this package amount cost, say $10, and we're letting them consume 25, if they consumed all $25, then our loss would be 15, the difference between the two. In order to build the allowance, and this is the charge code we'll use on the add-on itself, in order to build this, we first have to have these two created. And to do that, when we're building it out, again, we're just going to choose the group allowance, and then it'll give us charge code type, and we can choose from loss, unused, or allowance. We do need to make sure that we are using the same tax amount on these codes. So all three of those would have to be the same as each other, and also the same as the items that you're going to have the guest consume. So again, we're using the 5% calculation, but notice it's a different number, and that's perfectly fine. We can do that. And actually, sometimes it's a good idea to do that. Let's take a look at 8,500. So 8,500 is my allowance adjustment tax A 5%. So it's the same amount. If I go in here, we are calculating at 5% flat per night, which is exactly the same as tax A. And because they match, the system will know that they work together and not causes any issues. So now we have our our profit and loss charge codes as well as the base allowance charge code. Let's go over to rates and add-ons and take a look at how we can build this out. Now we have already built this out. I have here somewhere, or I believe we built it out. There we go. Spa food and beverage credit, $25 per day per room. So let's take a look at what we did here. First thing we did is give it a name and a description. On the right-hand side here, you have an allowance toggle if this is enabled for your property. You can toggle this on and it will give you some extra boxes to choose from. The price is the amount that we were always kind of associating with this credit, but this is how much they can consume. This is the value to the guest. So we're charging internally $10. Now maybe that's added to or backed out of the rate, or maybe it's, a part of a promotion and we're just having an internal cost that we're charging ourselves for that. But the value to the guest is $25. So we're letting them know you can use $25 per day per room in the spa, food and beverage. Charge code again, this is the allowance charge code that we just created. So this will be where you can see your production and your forecast for revenues specifically on the allowances here from allowance reporting and so on. This is not what they can consume. That's going to be a little bit further down. So let's actually look at that. Allowed for consumption. We're saying that there are 3 spa food plus 2 others that are used: food, beverage, and non-alcoholic beverage. That makes sense. You can obviously add more here. So anytime that these charges are posted or these charge codes are posted to a reservation with this package, they will be consumed up till the amount of $25 per room per day. And that's on every day of the week. It's not a consume next day because they can have it on the day of arrival. I'm not going to mark it as any of these, though perhaps we would say something like rate only if it's a specific, package only pre-booked rate. Parking add-on, breakfast add-on, again, neither of those, and we can go ahead and save changes there. So with that in place now, I could go ahead and make a rate that is, let's say, the spa package. So we've got retail with breakfast, retail with parking. Let's do a retail with spa. With that filled out, just to save a bit of time, the most important thing to note is, again, under our add-ons, we do also have the option for the retail groups too. These are in here too to be selected. Okay. When we are working with allowances, we need to consider how these will look on the guests' folios. So let's take a look at that now. I think I have an example that we were looking at earlier. Hopefully that's still there. Under James Lee. Perfect. So James has 2 rooms, 501 and 402. Let's jump into 501. If I go under bill and charges, you see the rate is the dinner package. Bill and charges here. It looks like I can see my package charge. Again, that's going to be room charge, allowance, food and beverage credit, and then taxes and so on. There is an F&B charge of $500 here, which is unusual because I thought that he had a credit in there of 25 or however much the dinner credit is. Dinner on day of arrival. Okay. So what is this all about? Well, let's actually take a look at what's been happening. There's an allowances tab on this guest bill up here now. If I click into here, this shows me the amounts that are being posted and the amount that has been consumed against the postings. So the allowance value is 200 and the amount is 100, right? So those are the differences. Consumed total amount 250. Interesting. So there's that's actually the full amount that it's. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's a $250 charge. So $50 more is posted to the guest bill in this case. Now, this is a little interesting. $50 more was posted to the guest bill, but I don't see it on this invoice. And I don't see the $500 that we're seeing down here. What on earth is going on? Well, we have a nice trick you can share when you have 2 rooms or more than 2 rooms, more than 1 room on the same package or that have the same package elements. You can share those elements for consumption between those rooms. So here I've chosen 402, James's other room. Let's just take a look at what's happening on that end. So I'm going to go back to his stay card. And we'll flip over to 402. There we go. And let's take a look in here. And if I expand that out, you'll see this is just the room charge and the package tax. But under allowances, take a look here. We have allowance loss F&B charge 100 and allowance loss F&B charge value 200 up here. So we've actually been consuming basically some of this guest's allowance towards the 200 from the other reservation. So it's gone through and looked at the first reservation, said, they've already used their limit of 200. So let's push that extra amount over to the second reservation they're sharing with. Let's check. Do they have any credit left? They do. So let's go ahead and use that. And anything additional would be posted over and above that. Now, correspondingly, just to confuse things, when we were on the call earlier, I did post a large amount to this reservation, which is also sharing in return with the other James Lee booking. So because I did that, it did the same thing and went out to look in the second reservation. There were no, it wasn't available, so it went ahead and posted it at the full amount. So that's a easy way to go in and see how much allowance is remaining basically for the customers to consume. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at how we can really upsell and promote some of these add-ons and packages to customers in the different areas and ways it can be done. So first and foremost, we're going to go under settings and we're going to take a look at guest promos and upsells here. Now we're going to focus on upsell add-ons, but I do want to call out that we have upsell rooms, late checkout, and early check-in. The reason these ones are separated out is just because they have some extra functionality to be considered. Rooms really is just handled within this particular screen and isn't really related to add-ons. That's covered in different topics. But I do want to point out that there is a force upsell checkbox here. And if you are doing upsells in the system and have force upsells selected, that's what's going to prompt during check-in, during reservations and so on, to show the room types that are available and the upgrade amounts you've defined. So if you want to see those through the check-in flow and you're not seeing them currently, that's how you can enable that. Late checkout and early check-in. So these are a little different in that we offer different times for late checkout, three here. We're doing 12 p.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. And we have different add-ons, different package elements associated with each of those. So for 4 p.m., we have a late checkout 4 p.m., we have a late checkout 1 p.m., and so on. And we're defining the price here. Now, if you think about it, when we're building add-ons, like let's say late checkout 4 p.m., if I go into that specific add-on itself, there it is. I'm defining a price point here. Now, that makes sense because maybe this is something I'm posting after the fact. This isn't something we're adding to the reservation in advance. It's not necessarily being offered to the guest during the checkout flow. It's just something that we're putting in after the fact. So maybe we normally charge $75, and if I went ahead and posted that, it would default to $75 for me. But through this option under promos and upsells, late checkout, I can kind of override that. So here we're offering it for $35 instead. These times can be changed, and you can obviously change the amounts day by day if it's helpful. One thing to notice, and we're going to look at this in the dashboard momentarily, but there is a late checkout tile on the dashboard, and that can show you the count or the number of late checkouts that you have departing on that given day. We'll just jump over and take a look at that real quick. There it is, late checkout. So these are the ones that have purchased a late checkout for today. They have the L indicator here as the room status, which is indicating that they have done exactly that. Let's just move back over. Promos and upsells, late checkout. So in order for those counts to appear on the dashboard, in order for it to reflect as one of those late checkouts, it's actually all to do with the charge code. The charge code that you have listed here must be the same charge code you're using on these add-ons when we built them. So if I'm not using 1007 in my late checkout 4 p.m., then it won't appear on that screen. That's how you can manage that basically. And maybe that's useful because it means you can build one without that particular charge code and it won't be included. So maybe 12 p.m. is complementary, right? So Go ahead and put it in there. And again, it won't, as long as the charge code is different, it won't show as a late checkout. So it gives you some nice flexibility. You can also exclude guests in pre-allocated rooms. Maybe if you only pre-allocate your VIPs, allows any issues or prevents any issues there. Offer late checkout as an add-on at check-in. Not very often to see that used, but some hotels will like to offer guests an extra extension on their stay on the day of departure. There's also an option here, sell additional checkout offer. This is a placeholder for future functionality, so you can just disregard that. If you want to limit the late checkouts by room types, again, you can do that here. So maybe you don't want the one bedroom king suite or your presidential suite or so on. You don't want to have those ever be offered late checkouts, and you can exclude them here. Early check-in functions very much the same way, just kind of in reverse with much the same features and functionality. And then under upsell add-ons, this is where we're going to see most of what we're going to need to look at today. So first, you can determine, are we using or are we offering upsells in guest mobility? So that's the option where guests can check in or check out using a mobile device. They're invited via email to check in or check their bill and so on. The guest station, guest kiosk. So if you have a kiosk in the lobby where guests can check in and check out, maybe you want to offer some upsells during that process too. And then a guest mobility add-on staff alert. So if during a check-in process, someone purchases an add-on, who do we want to let know that that happened? In my case, I'm just putting in this, but maybe we have an operational email or info email, housekeeping, whatever it might be. You also have some options to change the labels that you'll see on screen for those in the default image. That we're going to skip over for now, though. We're going to look up these options, PMS, guest mobility, and kiosk. This is where I can go in and say, okay, I want these specific add-ons to be available in this particular area. So these are all the add-ons we have, and they're all being used currently. They're all active. But obviously, I can deactivate them if I wanted to. When we look at our guest mobility add-ons and our kiosk add-ons, these will be the same. This is where I can say, okay, guests checking in on their phone, I do want them to have parking shown, so long as there's enough available. Mirror may be the same thing. Not sure why we would want that, but that's an option there. So you might see this thing again you might see actually like a Prosecco on arrival, those types of things. You can define those here. And again, if you are doing any kind of Prosecco on arrival, I would make sure to notify staff on guest purchase just to make sure you're aware if they're booking it at the last minute. Okay, let me just make sure I've covered everything so far that I needed to get covered. Let's see. Perfect. So we did look at the dashboard, so we understand now how that can be counted when a guest is being offered late checkouts and they accept them, but you can also add this manually. So we have two in here already, 105 and 305. So let's say there's another late checkout for today. So 404, myself again. So I'm coming down and I say, I'd really love a 4 p.m. checkout if available. So I take a look and it is available for me to do. So I'm going to go here under add-ons. Notice this is 11 a.m., right? And it's kind of changeable here. So I could put in 4 p.m. So now technically I have a late checkout, but I'm not being recorded in the tile because I've not paid for it really. But housekeeping would know. So that's one way you could do it. But I'd probably want to go here under add-ons, add more to this room. And actually, before I do that, I want to just change this back just to show that it will update. So I'll put that back to 12 p.m. There we go. Okay, so add-ons, add more to this room. If you go under room revenue and then late checkout 4 p.m. So because we're using that particular add-on and it's associated with that same code in the upsell late checkouts, it now gives me that indicator that we were seeing with the time updated to whatever has been chosen there. So now that'll appear on housekeeping reports and so on as late checkout and should also appear for us in our late checkout tile here, which it is doing. Perfect. So now we're going to look at reports. These have all been generated already, so I'm just going to go into my reports inbox. But we have primarily these five: breakfast list, allowance forecast, add-on production, forecast, and upsell. So let's look at breakfast list first. This is, as you might imagine, a list of all guests in house for the date that you've selected and who has breakfast included versus not included, and then the rate plan that they're currently listed on. You get the guest name and then any travel agents, groups, and so on there too, if that's helpful. VIPs are listed there too. Next up, we have our allowance forecast report. This is useful for forecasting any add-ons or any packages in which there's an allowance specifically. So here we're seeing the full breakfast package, which in this case is an allowance one. But we would also, excuse me, we would also see things like our spa package if we had that created there too. Add-on production. This is a grid, I believe. Yeah, this is a grid with the different add-ons on the left-hand side, the count, how many total, and then the revenues and average revenues per day listed up there. Add-on forecast, much like our allowance forecast, basically the same idea, but for all add-ons, not just allowance add-ons. So we do have our food and beverage add-ons in here too, but we also have things like late checkout and so on in there also. And then add on, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, add on upsell. This is where you can see how many arrivals you started the day with, how many you ultimately had, how many you offered upsells to via mobility, via kiosk, and then how many actually took it. So what's your conversion? We have seen customers use upsells for add-ons and late checkouts and early check-ins actually have the system pay for itself because of the conversions they're seeing. So definitely something to look into, and this is how you can report on that. Someone on the call had also asked about a way to see guest information on these add-on reports. There is an option here, financial transactions. Someone had suggested this on the call to use the financial transactions revenue report, and then you'll actually see each individual charge that was made with the particular packages. Okay, so that was pretty much everything that we wanted to cover in the re-recording. We did mention again next month on the first Thursday, we will be having another session. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to have covered, anything super important, feel free to reach out to us at officehours@stayintouch.com and we'll add that to the list. Anything you'd like to have activated that you've seen today or discuss further, again, same email, reach out to us, or you can reach out to support and we'll get you help with that. And thanks for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next month.